So today is September 27, 2018. This is the meeting of the Kubernetes Storage Special Interest Group. Today we're going to begin planning for Q4 2018, the Kubernetes 1.13 release. So we have the planning spreadsheet here, and I added a new tab for 1.13. I copied over the items that were incomplete from the last quarter. We can review them and decide if we still want to work on them, and if so, who's going to work on them. I also populated some new items at the bottom that I think we should be working on for this quarter. And if there's any other items that you think we should be working on, feel free to add them at the bottom, and we'll go in and review and assign them. And then during the next meeting, we'll finalize this list and get started for the next quarter. As a reminder, this coming quarter is shorter because of the holidays at the end of the quarter. So code freeze, I believe, is about a week prior to Thanksgiving, which is November 31st, about a week and a half. So there's not a lot of time for coding. Let's make sure we stay focused and try to get finish as much as we commit to. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So for CSI, the higher level goal for this quarter will be to move the CSI feature in Kubernetes to GA. And so the items that we have for CSI, I'm going to prefix with CSI, and we're going to set the priority. Anything that is a P0 means it will be a blocker for us getting to GA. P1 will be kind of up in the air. We'll need to decide, and P2 is not a blocker. So in this case, CSI entry block volume support remained in alpha as of last quarter. I think it would be nice to move to beta. But I would call it a P2, meaning it's not something that we would block the release on. If we were unable to move CSI's block implementation to beta, we could still move the rest of it to GA and move the block portion on its own, independent of the core. Thoughts on that, and is anybody interested in working on that?
Yeah, that sounds good. I should have at least one, a couple drivers that are implementing CSI by then, so we'll have a pretty good idea where we stand.
Awesome.
As far
and
as
are
beta.
You willing to lead this feature?
Yes, I'll
Okay.
continue to lead it. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Vlad. And if you're interested in helping with any of these features, please realize that there's a lot of work that goes into each one of these features, and if you don't necessarily have to lead the feature in order to help code it. If you're interested in helping, just reach out to the dev lead. So in this case, reach out to Vlad if you want to help with adding, moving the block support for CSI. So please don't hesitate if you don't want to take the lead but are still interested in helping. Next up is the CSI driver for VMware. Vlad, is this still something that you guys want to commit to for this quarter?
Absolutely. We have currently we have work going on. Perfect. To hit the target for the end of the year.
Cool. Sounds good. Next up is CSI library. The mount library, core Kubernetes and CSI drivers should consume, basically moving this to a common location. So let's say move mount library to external common repo. Travis, are you still interested in leading this?
Yeah, I don't think he's on. I'll reach
for Csi and Fiber Channel.
Sorry, you're breaking up there. Could you say that again?
So channel and Csi.
No, to be clear, this is not the iSCSI or Fiber Channel common libraries. This is the mount code. So if you look inside the Kubernetes volume utilities, there is a mount library, mount.go, and then there's flavors of it for each platform, mount underscore Linux, mount underscore Windows, and so on and so forth. That code is used by a lot of different volume plugins. Today, I think they just copy that code. So ideally, what we want to do is move that code into a common library that can then be consumed by both Kubernetes and other CSI drivers that need to consume it.
I'll reach out. I don't think Travis is on the call. I'll reach out to him because I know he started a PR for this.
Perfect.
Last quarter, and last update is that he's still working on it. So I'll make sure he updates this document to reflect that.
Okay, that sounds good. Next up is the Pluggable end-to-end test framework. So this was an effort that was, I'm not sure what the actual progress here is, but the goal was to modify the end-to-end test framework that we have so that it's not a custom test that we write for every single volume plugin. Essentially, you write the test once, and then you can specify any arbitrary plugin that should run it. So something that's very important to continue to scale. Patrick, is this still something that you're interested in working on? Is anybody else interested in helping lead this?
So we're kind of doing some of this stuff. Yeah, you can put me down.
Cool. All right, and then we'll see if Patrick wants to pick this up. I'll put a question mark by his name for now, and then we can verify next time. All right, cool. Next item is local PV health monitoring. I'm not sure if Michelle's on the line.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. I think I'm still going to end up not having many cycles to look at this. So I don't know if anyone else in the community is interested in this feature or not, but I could use some help with.
So I have a kind of a strange community question regarding this. We're actually working on a local storage operator that may have some slight overlap on this, and the intent is to it's actually part of the OpenShift 4.0 platform that we're changing to. I don't know, do you guys have any interest in if we make this available upstream, if it solves some of these PV health monitor and PV deployment issues? Or is it something?
Yeah, it could potentially sound interesting.
Okay. Maybe we'll do a presentation on that in the following weeks and see if there's interest, if you guys are interested in going that direction or not. We just kind of assumed that you weren't, so we've kind of been doing the development on our own.
Yeah, that would be useful. Let's take a look at it. Maybe there's overlap here that we can benefit from.
There was also a design doc written for this, right? Probably by Michelle.
Yeah.
I think Nick wrote the design doc about this. I made some comments on it, but I don't think it's really made much progress.
Okay. So let's leave it unassigned. I mean, honestly, I'm okay not committing to it this quarter, considering how short it is. Would you be okay just dropping it for this quarter and then picking it up in the subsequent quarter?
That's fine.
Yeah, that's fine by me. I don't know if anyone else really wants this feature or not.
Okay. Anyone else on the call interested in pushing this quarter, local PV health monitoring? All right. It is officially gone from the quarter. Next up is Csi Conformance. The idea here is to establish a set of tests and requirements in order to consider yourself CSI approved. I don't think this is as important as Kubernetes conformance. because that becomes much more of an issue in terms of who claims to be Kubernetes and who doesn't. With CSI, the fact that we basically control the implementation side of CSI and Kubernetes, either you work with us or you don't. So that kind of acts as a forcing function for CSI conformance. But it would be nice to be able to have a formal definition of this.
Did we lose the Kubernetes conformance item?
That's what I was going to say. Maybe this should just be the Kubernetes conformance item.
Might have lost it. Let me see if I can copy it over.
Because this is pretty much done. I mean, in the Kubernetes CSI repo, there's already a conformance test suite.
There is a conformance test suite,
but that doesn't really test against like an actual driver.
Yeah.
It's all like stubbed out functionality.
Yep.
Right. It's to make sure that the driver implements the spec API just at the non-functional level, right? It's just, does this call return something? But I don't know how that we would do more than that. I mean, I guess there's a document that's establishing, you know, at the CNCF CSI level, they're kind of writing a big storage doc. It's got consistency guarantees and, you know, the deeper stuff in it that we don't really talk about in the spec itself. Would that test be run against that? I mean, is that, it seems like it's way far out.
For CSI conformance, I mean, it's the spec defines what CSI is. We need verification of that. The CSI sanity test suite that we have is one part of that. But beyond that, I think there's other behaviors that we need to be able to test and verify, especially across multiple calls that we don't necessarily do today. And then there could also be requirements that are, you know, not necessarily tested through a test suite, but are requirements for claiming that you're a CSI driver. I don't think this is super critical for this quarter, and considering how short the quarter is, I'm okay putting this off for the future. So I'm going to scratch this unless someone's very interested in working on it. And then for the Kubernetes conformance process, Michelle, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so last quarter I came up with a potential test plan, and now that we have done some refactoring in our E2E framework, I think this quarter we can try to start executing on that and writing test cases that can potentially be promoted for conformance.
Nice. So again, this is the test suite that certifies that your Kubernetes distribution is capable of supporting what the Kubernetes storage volume subsystem. So if you're interested in helping write the test for this or promote the existing test that we have, please raise your hand now.
Wait, is this, you said something a little confusing. You said the distribution of Kubernetes was supporting a CSI implementation. I thought this was more towards the volume plugin.
No. This is the distribution of Kubernetes supports the Kubernetes volume subsystem. So you could have Kubernetes, I believe, I'm not sure if the profiles have been established, but longer term, I believe you could have a Kubernetes distro that doesn't really support state. And if you don't really have to worry about these tests. But if you have a Kubernetes distro that claims to be able to support state, then you have to be able to pass these tests. Is that correct, Michelle?
Yeah, that's the idea. And you could, as a Kubernetes provider, you can either supply a CSI plugin or a in-tree plugin that can meet the qualifications.
So ideally, I'd like Michelle to be the reviewer on these, and if we can get other folks to help out with this, that would be great. Looks like we have a volunteer on the chat. And that's great. SRI.
Yeah, this is Srini. Yeah, I've worked on the conformance side, so I'll touch base with Miss Michelle and see how I can help. Sorry.
That's great. Thank you. Priority-wise, I'm going to call this a P2 for the quarter in terms of implementation. Michelle, would you agree with that?
Yeah, that sounds fine. I think the Kubernetes itself, the conformance effort, general conformance effort in Kubernetes has not moved to looking at profiles yet. So I think a P2 is correct.
Perfect. All right, moving on. Provisioning capacity reporting for generic topology. Michelle, do you want to summarize what that is and if this is something we want to?
Yeah, this is basically the design we need to do in order to support dynamic provisioning for local volumes. We need a way to be able to support capacity reporting per node.
Does this including other disks mounting on the node, just not a root disk, or just a root disk?
This is for the intention here is for non-root disks. So if say you want to dedicate some like LVM volume group for local volumes to do dynamic provisioning, you need a way to support, report the capacity of that volume group separate from the root disk reporting that we already do for ephemeral volumes.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Is anybody interested in leading the, I guess it's the alpha implementation here? Is the design complete?
Yeah, so it looks like Lai Chu Quinn from Huawei has been working a lot on this. He's going to drive the design for this.
Okay. So this is in design phase at the moment. Okay. Is it fair to assume that they want to continue to work on it?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll leave it there. We'll call it a P2. Goal for this quarter is design. Moving on, next up is CSI external provisioner scalability issues. Is Matt Wong on the line? I wanted to get an idea of what work was remaining here.
Yeah, I think it's done. I think on the external provisioner side, they've already updated to the latest library, and that has the leader election stuff. So for 1.13, the only thing we might have to do is they're releasing like a lease object or something specifically for leader election. So that might, I guess that would be a different item than this though, because we'd have to do that for external attacher too. Anyway, yeah, I think it's done. I think Cheng is working on this or helping me work on this. So yeah.
Awesome. So we'll go ahead and move, change this item to CSI external containers, move leader election to lease object.
I got a question on this because previously both provisioner and attacher are using stateful set. And during our development, we realized that if the one node is disconnected, stateful set won't delete the pod automatically. And I found that in our official documents say that Kubernetes version 1.4 or newer will not delete the pod just because the node is unreachable. So this basically means if currently if the external provisioner, the node of that provisioner is down, the whole cluster won't able to provision anything.
So I think once leader election is working, which I believe with the current batch of sidecar containers released with 1.12, it's using the endpoint object to do leader election. you should be able to enable leader election and then use a replica set, because you don't have to worry about if two instances accidentally start at the same time. They'll be able to figure out which one should take leader.
Okay, that sounds great. So it's basically just down previously for the attacher. We saw the change in the attacher. Now it's down in the provisioner as well, right?
Yes, I believe that's correct. Is that right, Matt?
Yeah, it should work. If not, just
Okay, deployment. Thank you.
Cool. And if you can help with updating the documentation around this, that would be extremely helpful on Kubernetes-CSI.
Sure.
Thank you. So we'll leave this assigned. And Matt, you said there was somebody else who was working on this as well?
I thought Cheng on your side was...
Oh, Cheng. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, cool. Moving on, local volume dynamic provisioning. So considering there's a dependency here on the provisioning capacity, do we want to try to pursue both at once, Michelle?
I think it would make sense we implement the capacity reporting stuff first.
Okay. I'll go ahead and drop that. Subpath expansion. What was the work here?
Need to make an API proposal, take it through API review, and then implement that.
Oh, basically redesign the feature. Okay. Is Kev Taylor still the right person to pursue this?
Yes, I am working with him on a API proposal.
Okay. Cool. So we'll continue to call that P3. Next up is CSI driver, update iSCSI driver to use the libraries. And we can drop that part. John, are you still interested in working on this?
Absolutely. Yep.
Awesome. So I believe the repos were created and should be ready to go. So you should be able to start checking code in.
Yep. I pushed up the first couple PRs. So
awesome. And in terms of the library itself, is that worth tracking as a separate item for this quarter? Do you foresee work there?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's work there to get it to the next phase. So whether we call that GA or if that might be too soon for some people, I don't know. I'd like to see GA by the end of this quarter.
Okay. Awesome. Next up is CSI inline volume support. Plus whitelisting, plus docs discouraging use with remote volumes. This was work that was started last quarter. It was almost there. Vlad, are you still interested in pursuing this?
Yes, absolutely.
Cool, cool. I am going to mark this as a P2 for this quarter, meaning that if we don't get this in, I wouldn't block the GA of CSI on this because this is additional functionality that's being added on top.
I think that makes sense.
Okay, cool. All right. Next up is dynamic max capacity per plugin per node count. For entry CSI. So we already have a mechanism by which we can measure the max number of volumes per node. And this item was saying, in addition to that, we want to also be able to limit the max capacity. So even if you have, for example, 2 volumes, but together they're 100 terabytes, and that's more than the max limit, you can't add any other additional volumes. Hemant, are you on the line by any chance?
Yep.
Awesome. Is this something that you're interested in pursuing this quarter?
Yeah, I can drive this effort in this quarter. Yep.
Awesome. And this would be, I guess it has to start on the CSI side?
Yeah, first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's say this is CSI spec change first. And then if we can get it in for the CSI spec, then in a subsequent release, we can pull it in on the Kubernetes side.
Yeah.
So speaking of CSI spec, we have add support for volume expansion. It was, did it get merged?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Not yet, actually. And it'll be like, yeah, I need to address a little bit. Almost there, so close, but I need to just address some of James' comments, and then we should get it merged.
Okay, so then we'll keep that item there as well. Next up is the CSI driver for AWS. Is Fabio still the right person to assign this to?
Yeah, we have, so AWS, Amazon stepped in and has been helping us out on this, but I think Fabio's leading it still.
Okay.
Definitely from the storage perspective.
Maybe we'll say Nishi. Perfect. And then for Azure, Deep, are you still the correct owners for these?
The real owners are actually the Azure folks, so Dong Liu, but they are typically not on the call. So it's still happening. I followed up with Andy and Dong, and yeah, it's a work in progress.
Okay. And would you be okay being the reviewer for these?
Yeah, certainly.
Cool. And could you communicate that we're tracking it here and, you know, kind of what that
Sure, absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you. Next up is a large item. So for the last couple quarters, David Zhu on my team has been working on establishing a plan for migrating the in-tree volume plugins to CSI. That is ready to be approved, or the plan is basically approved, and the next steps are starting to implement that. We're hoping to have an alpha implementation in Q4, and then either beta in Q1 or Q2, and then GA after that. This is something that we need to do very carefully. The marker for success here is that it happens silently and nobody notices. You know, if we mess this up, that means that it would be a user visible issue that would prevent them from accessing their volumes in the way that they want. This is a very large project. I expect David to lead it, but there is a lot of room for folks to come in and help here. I know there were some folks from AWS that were interested in helping with this. Is anybody on the call interested in helping with this? It's very important work, especially if you have a volume driver that is in tree. It's probably worth your time to at least come and look at this, because it will affect your driver at one point or another.
Yeah, Saad, I'll definitely bring this up internally to raise visibility for it, and if we can jump in and help, we'll do that as well.
Awesome, thanks, Vlad. If anybody else is interested, we need help here. So ideally, I'd like to have at least David plus 2 people working on this quarter. So if we can get at least 1 or 2 more people, that would be great.
What are the functional
You
pieces
can.
breaking out of this? Is there more tangible things that we can put down here to assign people to?
Yeah, actually, David has the list of concrete items. He wasn't able to join the call today, but I can ask him to break these apart, and then we can do assignments within this task.
Okay.
So you can put my name down, Saad, deep.
Awesome.
And either me or someone else from Docker can help.
Cool. Thank you very much, Deep.
Absolutely.
All right. Next up is CSI External Provisioner Topology Support for Kubernetes to CSI. Do we want to move this to beta? Thoughts on that?
I think it would be good to have by the time we do the in-tree migration.
Yeah. I think aligning those two would make sense. I think we have, we can probably delay it one more quarter if we need to. I'm going to put it down as a P2 moving to beta. And is anybody interested in helping drive this? Okay, so it might be that we don't have folks working on it this quarter and we can pick it up in Q1 if we need to.
So I thought Cheng's PR from this week kind of added the support, right?
It did add the support. So the work is already there. It works. This is just promoting it to beta, fixing any bugs, that kind of thing. All right, cool. Moving on, CSI driver for Fiber Channel and the Fiber Channel Common Library. Mathusin, is this something that you're still interested in continuing to work on?
Yeah, I am.
Awesome. Okay. Next up is how do we test Fiber Channel, iSCSI, NFS, and all these libraries? I think there was work that was proposed last quarter. Brad, Ben, is this something you guys are still interested in driving this quarter?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll leave it here and I'll leave it assigned to you, and then we can figure out what it means more concretely. Next up is flex volume resizing. It looks like the PR was almost made it in last quarter, but it just missed code freeze. So we'll go ahead and continue the push this quarter. Aniket, are you still the right person to work on this?
Actually, this is Srini. He may not be available now, but yeah, we are almost done with the review, so
Okay.
we're ready to go.
And should I leave it assigned to him or?
Yes.
Okay. Cool. Next up is online volume expansion, moving that feature to beta. Matt, Hamant, are you guys willing to pursue that this quarter?
Yeah.
Okay. Next one is an important feature. I think this has been something that a number of folks have run into. And there's a couple of flavors of this, but essentially what it boils down to is that if the node becomes unavailable for some reason and is unable to acknowledge that it was safely able to unmount, in specific cases, the volume is effectively stranded on that node. And even though ideally we want to be able to reschedule that pod to a different node, we can't actually move the volume because it never gets detached. There was a huge discussion around trying to fix this last quarter. And I think it involved actually interacting with teams beyond just storage, with the node team and other teams who are giving us the signal of when a workload is migrated and moved and actually deleted and things like that. I think it's very important work that we need to prioritize more highly this quarter. I'd like to call it a P1 and see if we can get more folks working on this, ideally more than one person. Yassine, are you still interested in working on this, and is anybody else interested in helping with this?
Yes, he is there.
It doesn't look like it. I think he's in Paris, so it might be
okay.
time.
So another person, Nick, also talked to us. He is very interested in making a proposal for this.
Okay.
Since we already discussed something, so I can help review too. Yeah, I'll help with this. Yeah.
Yeah, I was involved with him. Yes, I was talked to Jordan and Derek before about the node team, about their input. So I'll keep an eye out for it, and if necessary, I don't know if Yassine will. Yeah, so I'll keep it. I'll be interested in helping this one.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, I think this is one of the highest priority items for us this quarter. We really need to figure out how to handle this. I think a lot of people have run into this issue, so we really need to fix it. So speaking of areas that are causing pain in our current volume subsystem, the volume reconstruction code continues to be a source of pain. I think previously we prioritized this as a P3. I'd like to bump this to P2. I think we continue to see bugs in this area. The task here would be to actually design what this feature would look like. Apparently there is a kubelet checkpointing mechanism. So the goal here is if we can use kubelet's native checkpointing mechanism, assuming it does what we think it does, then ideally if the kubelet crashes and comes back up, we haven't really lost state. So even if we find orphan volume mounts, we would be able to correlate that with our binary memory cache and figure out who it belongs to and do the right things. And then that way we can clean up after ourselves much better than we do. Vlad, I'm going to pull your name off of that because I think I want you focused on CSI ideally.
I agree.
Is anyone else interested in helping with this quarter? Okay, I think it's important work. If somebody is interested in working on it, please reach out to me and we can get you started on this. Otherwise, we'll leave it unassigned for this quarter. Again, it's a short quarter, and we want to make sure we remain focused on what the higher order bits are, which are getting some of our features to GA. So speaking of features to GA, moving topology to GA. Michelle, do you want to talk about this? Or the work that's
So I think we're in pretty good shape to move to GA. I think we just need to add a few tests, and that's about it.
And is anybody interested in helping out here, helping Michelle?
Yeah, so Deep has already signed up to write some more tests around this feature.
Awesome. You're all over the place, Deep. Thank you. Next up is local PVs to GA.
So this one, I'm not as sure if we're ready to move to GA yet.
Okay.
I think there are still a lot of questions around the, I guess, deployment lifecycle. So these are things like the local storage operator and stuff is trying to solve. We might want to delay this one more quarter to iron out those issues. I think the people that are really clamoring for this feature have already been using it in alpha and beta.
Okay.
So I think going to GA, I'm not sure if anyone is actually just waiting for this feature to go GA or not.
Okay. Would you prefer to leave it here as like a P3 or just scratch it from the quarter?
Maybe let's just put it as a P3.
Okay. Cool. And anybody else working on this or helping out with this?
Like I said, Hemant's doing some of the work on the operator.
Okay.
Of the local volumes, yeah. We can go into that.
Okay, cool. So hopefully we can work together on that one. Sounds good. Next up is topology and volume attach limits integration.
Right. So this is the design doc that Michelle just submitted the other day. So it's just to implement that work and make sure that the limit implementation that already exists is implemented into the check volume binding predicate, essentially.
Yeah, and actually to put one more wrench in this, Tim has some concerns about the current volume attached limit design, so we might have to revisit some stuff.
Yeah, I think the one challenge is like, how do we, like maybe we have to schedule a call with Tim or the other folks and discuss like what is done and what has already went in. I think and I need to reconcile his feedback and see what.
Sorry, can you summarize what the feature here is?
This feature in particularly is about like how we count volumes when the volumes are delayed binding. We never used to do the delayed binding, but now that we are doing like delayed binding, how we reconcile delayed binding with number of volumes being used on a node actually. So,
Got it. So this is during scheduling.
Yeah, yeah. But
yeah, but actually the concerns that Tim brought up is not on this part, but it's about the actual volume attached limits feature itself.
Like how do you express the limit, right?
Okay.
I think.
Yeah,
and currently it's expressed as a resource, right? On the pod. And I guess
yeah, he had some concerns about the way it was being expressed.
Okay. So volume attach limits, let's just make this very clear. This is moving the volume attach limits feature to beta.
It's already went beta in 1.12.
Okay.
The volume limit feature. And
so this is to integrate the volume attached limits to delayed binding, I think, basically.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay.
Because right now what happens is like it's possible that for local volumes in particularly we might be overcounting them actually, and that can cause problems with.
And the concerns that Tim has are on the original volume attached limits feature or on the delayed binding integration?
The original feature.
Original. Wonderful.
It does run into a little bit the delayed binding bits as well. Like where do we do counting? Tim has proposed that we should do it in Envision controller. It does a little bit run into delayed binding, but we can talk this in a different call, I think.
Okay. And the delayed binding feature here would be going to alpha since it doesn't exist?
No, that's already beta.
Sorry, the integration with like this complete feature here.
That is beta, right.
So it already exists. We have an alpha version of this?
No, it does not.
It does not. I'm not sure if we need to actually explicitly call it out as a
separate feature. Okay, that makes sense. Then that means it aligns with whatever we're going to call volume attachment limits, which happens to be beta. So let's have a feature to revisit design for volume attached limits to see if the concerns that Tim has can be addressed. Does that seem fair to track those as two separate items?
Yeah. And the dev lead for that is Hemant, right? Good.
Okay, perfect. All right, cool. Thank you for the clarification there. Next up is bringing Snapshot support to beta. I think this is a lot of great work done last quarter bringing this to alpha. There's a great blog post coming out about this soon on Kubernetes IO. So a lot of good momentum. We should continue to carry that forward. I think Jing and Xing have a list of features that they're interested in adding for beta. The big question I have is, I'm okay, folks, continuing to work on this, but do we want to move the designation from alpha to beta this quarter, or do we want to give it another quarter before we do that?
Usually, how is the process usually? I'm not familiar with it.
It's not officially, like, there's no official, like, exact process on the graduation. In general, what we do is implement it as alpha and wait for feedback to see how people are using it and see what kind of issues they have on it. Normally, once we have folks using it, it's enough of a signal one way or the other to say, okay, it's working the way that we generally intend to, or not working the way that we want to. Ideally, I don't want to get to beta and have what happened with volume attach limits, but to be fair, the Snapshot's design has been very thoroughly vetted, so I'm less concerned about that happening here. But I'd prefer to take it a little bit slower, but we could take it to beta this quarter and then keep it in beta 2 quarters. So
the main thing is once you move the API to beta, it becomes harder to change the API.
Yep.
So I think to move from alpha to beta, we should be very confident that the API we have is the API we want.
Yep.
I think in this case, we should give the vendor some time to see and integrate with the feature. And you mentioned that it's short quarter. I don't know if at least from my perspective, we haven't looking thoroughly into the snapshot feature yet, but we definitely want to support that. So I think we should get some more time to try the feature and see how it goes with our products.
I think that's fair. Xing, Jing, would you be okay if we left this in alpha for this quarter? We can continue to polish it and add features, but it'll give vendors a chance to go and implement it. And based on their feedback, if things look good, then next quarter we can move it to beta.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, makes sense.
Great.
Yeah.
And then from our side, I think we might have Andrew Large, who's new to the team, help with this as well. Possibly in addition to Jing, we'll sort that out and get back to you on that. So next feature is CSI drivers to support snapshotting. Do we need to track this as a separate item, or?
I just added. I just want to kind of asking whether anyone plan or interested in have their drivers to support snapshotting, and so we have idea. Yeah. It's not necessarily as a separate item, but here I just yeah.
So is anybody else implementing snapshotting support in their CSI driver this quarter? I know at the moment Portworx has snapshotting in the works. GCPD, I believe, is already completed. What were the other few that are already completed?
We also have.
Oh, sorry. This is I'm doing on the Longhorn for Rancher Labs. I think we're going to work on that this quarter.
Okay.
Yeah, so we also have a snapshot support in OpenSDS driver, and also Ceph RPD has support for that too.
Okay.
This is Matt from Daytera. We're going to be implementing that this quarter as well.
Cool.
So definitely reach to us, so we can help and also see what's part we should improve. Yeah.
Do we have a way to run E2E tests for snapshots?
We do have a PR submitted for that.
So
The in-tree, there's in-tree E2E tests. We do have a PR. Right now, it's submitted, being reviewed.
I think that is for host pass testing.
That is true. Yeah, that's true. So, right.
It depends, like which driver. Like, for example, GCE PD, we have the support for the CSS drivers. So there we have E2E test, but that's
Right.
more for the driver like E2E test.
Right. So, is there anyone from the GC team working on that? Because so you can take a look of the PR, and then
yeah, we might like.
So I know David is doing some work to be able to run Kubernetes E2E tests against the GCE PD CSI driver.
Yep, I think his PR is already out for that. I think I moved it yesterday, so.
I mean, he's working on it to actually run it in the CSI repo instead of in the in-tree repo.
Okay.
Is that the sanity test, or is this something else?
No, this is actually like a real E2E test testing real functionality.
Is that the thing that Patrick is working on? Because I thought he's also working on something.
He's working on refactoring the in-tree E2E framework to make it easier to pull out so that you can run it out of tree.
Okay.
And David is also currently working on pulling the out of tree stuff to run, or sorry, the in-tree E2E to run out of tree, but he's not actually refactoring anything. He's just pulling everything.
Okay.
So once his PR like merge, we can definitely, I think, add similar testing for Snapshot.
David's PR, will that be on the CSI test repo, or where will that be?
No, that's in the GCE PD repo.
Oh, okay.
Because the test actually like brings up a GCE environment and a GCE E2E cluster and stuff.
Okay.
Okay, next up is automated end-to-end testing for CSI sidecar containers. Currently, this is a manual process. It should be automatic so that we are less likely to have regressions when new versions of these sidecar containers are cut. Glad to see Patrick propose this and lead it. If anyone's interested in helping with it, please reach out to Patrick. Next up are the set of tasks that we have for moving CSI to 1.0 and to GA. Number one is moving the spec to 1.0. I've gotten the ball started on this already. So far it looks like that is on track. Next up is moving the CSI persistent volume source and volume attachment API objects to V1. These are the core objects in Kubernetes for CSI. They are currently in V1 beta 1, and we need to move them to a V1 API. Is anyone interested in working on this?
You can sprinkle Jan's name throughout this wherever you.
All right, sounds good.
Like everything, right?
He said, I told him if he didn't join this call today, he was going to get stuck on all this stuff.
All right, cool. I can help with that as well. Moving the object to GA should be fairly straightforward. This one, kubelet device registration mechanism to GA, is probably going to require more work. It's about actually thinking about what are the additional things that we need to add here. In general, this feature tends to be led by somebody on the device plugin side, but we need someone from our side to help guide that and ensure that we have anything that we need from our end. For example, the unregistration call we have to implement and things like that. Anyone interested in helping lead that from our side?
I'll continue to do that. Saad.
Okay.
Just at a distance.
Sounds good.
Yep.
And then
sounds good.
Cool. And then we'll have device. So we need to get the ball rolling on talking to them and establishing that this is the goal for the quarter and making sure that we figure out what the work is to actually get to GA. So let's do that early and make sure everybody's on the same page and establish some deadlines in terms of the things that we need to do to make that happen. Next up is the Crd Installation Mechanism. So to the new objects that we introduced last quarter were the CSI driver object and the CSI node info object. They are both CRDs, and ideally we need some mechanism to be able to automatically install those. Today, the alpha implementation of these objects requires that the user manually install them, which is a little bit inconvenient. This is going to be an alpha feature, and most likely it'll actually be led by somebody on API machinery. But we need someone on our end to be involved with this process and kind of understand what it looks like and make sure it makes sense. Anyone interested in helping kind of guide that from our end? Okay, I'll put my name down for that. Next up is handling CRD creation race condition. Honestly, I think this will be needs to be addressed as a part of the design above. I'm gonna go ahead.
That's CR or CRD?
What's that?
The race condition on the CR or the CRD?
I believe it's the CRD.
The definition for the...
But it needs to be clarified. I forget who actually added this.
Because if it was on the CRD, I think it would be led by the API machinery. It'd be the same as the thing above.
Okay, so let's get clarification on this, and then we can assign someone next at the next meeting. Next task is moving RBAC role definitions from Kubernetes to external repos. So today, if you look inside Kubernetes, we have a series of roles that we predefine and pre-install, including something like CSI external provisioner, CSI external attacher. And the recommendation from the security folks like Jordan Liggett is it doesn't make sense to have those defined within the Kubernetes core for these sidecar containers. And in fact, they should be defined with the sidecar containers and some manifest files there. So the work here is to move those out, delete them from Kubernetes, move them to external repos, and have the end-to-end test consume them from external repos, and update any deployment configuration files to pick it up from those external repos.
We might need to also double check with Jordan on this, but I remember Jordan saying that like once we put something in the bootstrapper, we can't really remove it.
Ah, interesting. Okay. But anyone interested in leading this work? All right, we'll leave that unassigned for now and figure out if this is something that we're going to do this quarter or not.
So is this a GA blocker?
It's not a GA blocker as far as I'm concerned because it doesn't actually prevent you from being able to deploy CSI drivers. It's just shifting where these roles are defined. So it's kind of a cleanliness thing on our part.
I would put it as a bug fix.
Yeah, ideally we should have it nailed in one place before we go to GA, but I don't think it's a blocker for GA. All right, next up is moving the CSI driver and CSI node objects, which were introduced last quarter from alpha to beta. Again, not a blocker for GA, but we should keep the ball moving there. I would mark this as a P2 as well. Anyone interested in that? Can I throw Jan's name on this one?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Next up is implementing CSI inline volume support. So this was very close to being completed last quarter. I'm going to go ahead and mark it as a P1 because we're so close. Actually, I think we tracked this above as well.
Yeah.
So to deduplicate that. And I think we gave it a P2 above. So we'll be consistent here and leave it assigned to you, Vlad. And you can go ahead and delete one of those and just deduplicate it.
I will.
And then the next item is Pbc Namespace Transfer. This is to allow PVCs to be transferred between namespaces in some sane way. It's a design that John and Aaron and folks started proposing as a result of the discussions that we had around volume cloning. So it sounds like, John, you want to take this to alpha this quarter?
Yeah, if folks think it's the right time, I'd like to.
Okay. I mean, P3 sounds like the right priority here. Let's give it a shot.
Cool.
And any interest in moving forward on cloning at all this quarter, or do you want to put that off for another quarter? This is a short quarter, so.
Let's put that on there too. Just copy that and change the name.
Well, we broke cloning down into its functional pieces, and this is one of the pieces that fell out of it, right? I think the clone is confusing some of the tasks on here because it was an aggregate of a couple of things. Now, that said, we have a priority 3, but this may be a good blocker for moving the snapshot thing from alpha to beta, because this was driving some of the discussion around the API for snapshot.
Right.
So we may want to give this a higher priority and say this is something we need to at least have an alpha out for before we do snapshot to beta.
So I think the biggest dependency was around the data source PV field.
Right.
And I think this particular task doesn't really care about the data source field.
Right.
So this was actually independent of all of that. The data source field was more for the actual cloning process that we were talking about, which we haven't signed up to do this quarter.
Okay.
So yeah, somebody put in data population. It's very much, yeah. So we can pursue that data population to support other data sources.
Yeah, we can start like designing at least.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Let's start designing that data sources like cloning and etc.
Cool. I'd volunteer to be a part of that too. I don't know if.
Yeah.
Anyone else interested in working on that? I think Aaron might be interested in that.
Right, and I also will help. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be interested in that one too.
And for anyone interested in this snapshotting and all these related topics, we still have like weekly meeting on Monday at 9. So please join us.
All right. I think that's all that we have.
Sorry, Saad. One more thing.
Sure. Go for it.
There's been some discussion on some very old bug, and it looks like people really want the ability to set UID on volumes. So today we support setting the supplemental GID through FS group and stuff, but I think some people are running into use cases where they also need to set the UID. And I think this is like a 4-year-old issue or something. But Tim is basically has been sort of updating the thread and saying, oh, just, try something, try something out. And it seems like someone is actually going to try something out. So we might need to pay more attention to that and make sure that whatever is proposed will work with the, I think, FS group. And also there's some like node namespace feature going on too. We might need to be more involved in that.
Okay. And the node namespace feature is related to this?
It might have some conflicts.
Okay.
Yeah. Like I think setting this UID could potentially impact how we do FS group and also this node namespace feature.
Okay. Cool. Thank you for bringing that up. And is anybody on the call interested in helping track that work and ensuring, kind of reporting back to SIG Storage and keeping an eye on it for us?
I can look into it. Where is the bug? Michelle, can you link it?
Yeah, let me find the link.
We can do this offline also. So.
All right. Yeah, feel free to paste the bug into the summary or status section over here. And I think that's it. Anything else anybody wants to add? Going once, going twice. All right, sold. So looks like we have an established plan for Q4. And again, it's going to be a short quarter. So if you have any tasks that are assigned to you, I would recommend doing taking a look at the priorities to help gauge what's most important. P0s are going to be blockers for launch. P1s are things that we really, really want to get in. P2s are nice to have, and P3s is if we have time. That'll help you prioritize what to focus on. And just be aware of what the deadlines are. Code freeze is roughly about a week and a half before Thanksgiving, which is November 31st. And let's have a great quarter. Anything else anybody wants to discuss or talk about? All right, cool. Thank you very much for your time. We're a little bit over time, so thank you for staying. And we'll reconvene in 2 weeks. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.